This is one of the most popular anime series from 17 years ago. Extreme violence, fanatical belief. The monks here never chant scriptures. Instead, they cuddle with beautiful women and eat lipstick every day. They never listen to religious texts. Their favorite music is rock and rap. They are known as the Empty Seven Clan, possessing countless wealth and followers, but they are not satisfied, because they want to become gods of this world. And all this begins with two headbands. First headband and second headband. Wearing the first headband earns one the title of god, but to qualify for challenging the god, one must become the wearer of the second headband. Young Afro's father was the owner of the first headband. In front of Afro, he was beheaded by Justice, the wearer of the second headband. Since then, the first headband fell into the hands of Justice. He became a god in the eyes of the people. Afro, holding his father's severed head. Years later, he became the wearer of the second headband. Yet, countless are those who seek to challenge a god. To keep the second headband, Afro must engage in ceaseless combat. Afro is like a demon returned from hell, moves through endless battles, his sword leaving no survivors. In the wilderness, corpses lie everywhere. The sword returns to its sheath. Smoke lingers on his fingertips. Killing is his deception. Revenge is his destination. The white-haired man is Afro's only friend. He talks incessantly, but in reality, he is just a friend imagined by Afro. In a quaint tavern, a samurai bursts in, breathless. He informs the crowd that Afro, adorned with a second headband, is on his way. With these words, the people are filled with determination, each one eager to slay Afro and seize his second headband. At that moment, Afro calmly moves through the crowd to the bar and orders a glass of lemonade.
Here you are, lemonade.
Afro takes a straw and drinks it all in one go. Afro's destination is the peak of Mount Sumeru, where Justice, the wearer of the first headband, resides. He traveled east. Unexpectedly, a cold-blooded assassin tails Afro from the tavern. Afro turns nonchalantly. His name was Soshun. He was good with a crossbow, hailing from the western continent across the sea. The battle is about to commence. Arrows whiz through the air. Afro swiftly parries each one with his sword. Afro charges towards a cliff, leaping into the mist, then swiftly pierces Soshun's body with a single stroke.
Where will you go now?
My aim is only to move forward.
At that moment, two monks on the cliff have been watching Afro closely. They belong to the Empty Seven Clan. Their ultimate dream is to kill the bearer of the second headband and claim the title of the divine. As Afro prepares to depart, his body began to ache intensely. It turns out that the tavern's juice is highly poisonous. Seeing this, one of the monks immediately leaped from the cliff's edge, landing steadily behind Afro. To Afro's surprise, his weapon was a rocket launcher. His eyes gleamed with malice, and he swiftly pulled the trigger. Afro and the rubble plummeted together to the bottom of the cliff. When Afro awoke once again, he saw a familiar woman, which triggered memories of the past. Back then, his father was slain. Afro took his father's sword and wore Justice's second headband around his waist. But this act drew the ire of many, all coveting the second headband. Aspiring to challenge the god, they seized Afro's second headband, even tossing his father's skull around like a plaything. Afro leaped high to cradle his father's skull, but one of the men below sent Afro flying with a stick. As torrential rain poured down, after an unknown period passed, a girl appeared before Afro, by the name of Okiku, a child of the swordsmanship dojo. She came with Ajin and their master to worship the gods. When Afro awoke from his stupor, the first thing he laid eyes on was the head of a bear doll. The seriously injured Afro was taken in by the swordsmanship dojo, where the children, like him, were homeless orphans. Among them, the youngest were Afro and Okiku. Their master was a stoic yet caring warrior, teaching swordsmanship while tending to their daily lives. Afro grew to have companions, but he never forgot his hatred. One evening, Afro heard from two samurai about second headband. He subconsciously followed them, stormed into their abode under the cover of night, and pressed his blade against one's neck. Despite Afro's relentless questioning, the man refused to divulge the whereabouts of the second headband. Without hesitation, Afro severed the man's neck, marking his first kill. Upon returning to the dojo, Afro faced a stern reprimand from his master, who solemnly reminded him that being human meant striving to survive, not to slaughter. He didn't want Afro's heart to be consumed by hate, nor for him to plunge into endless bloodshed for the second headband, and it was at this moment that Afro began to develop a fondness for lemonade. The cold and refreshing feeling would make him forget his hatred for a while. Finally, one day, his enemies found him. They were the companions of the warrior slain by Afro. The children scattered in fear. Afro stood in the middle. He calmly took a sip of lemonade, then swiftly threw the gourd, sword following suit. Afro's expression was cold, wielding his sword recklessly. At that moment, Ajin wielded a wooden stick, leading his companions in a charge. The battle began because of Afro, and it ended in Afro's hands. Once again, he demanded the whereabouts of the second headband, but the answer he received was that the wearer of the second headband had died, and the one who replaced him was nowhere to be found. Afro has recovered from his injuries under Okiku's care, but the mansion is still being watched. It's the assassins sent by the Empty Seven clan. He's on the phone with the monks, reporting in, but suddenly, Afro is behind him. As the sun sets in the west, Afro and Okiku share a dinner. Afro offers money in gratitude, saying he'll depart the next day, but Okiku pushes the money back. She wants Afro to stay with her for one more day. Afro was silent, but his heart was in turmoil. Early the next day, Okiku stands by the waterfall, reporting to the monks. Afro emerges from the bamboo grove. Okiku quickly hides her phone. Afro doesn't linger, he walks away. Looking at Afro's distant figure, Okiku couldn't help but be mesmerized. She joined the Empty Seven clan to survive. At night, a village below the mountains hosts a summer fireworks festival. Okiku brings lemonade, and they watch together. This is her favorite moment of the year. Amidst the fireworks, Okiku and Afro fall into a tender romance, but Okiku's true intention is to extract Afro's sword skills through her body. After gathering all the information, she takes the crucial memory card and destroys the communication device, but she didn't realize that Afro was already behind her. Seeing this, Afro confesses everything. She had been stealing Afro's memories and his swordsmanship, but she didn't want to continue. At that moment, the assassins have surrounded them. Okiku turns around. A long spear descends from above, piercing her body. Okiku dies. The memory card was taken by the Empty Seven clan's assassins, containing all of Afro's sword skills. In the raging fire, Afro cradles Okiku. Maybe this is the curse of second headband. To kill Afro, the monks created the most powerful robot in history, naming it the Terminator. The core combat skills of the Terminator were the swordsmanship secrets extracted from Afro's memories by Okiku. Its power exceeded Afro's by 20%. Additionally, the monks recruited a large number of assassins, including strong individuals from various countries. At the monks' command, they turned on each other, as only the victor would be eligible to battle Afro. However, in an instant, the Terminator effortlessly eliminated them all. On the cliff above, Afro continued his journey. Arriving at the foot of Mount Sumeru, waiting for him on the essential rope bridge was the Terminator. Without hesitation, Afro entered the thick fog and stood before the Terminator. A fierce battle was inevitable. Sword flashes filled the air as Afro moved like the wind, but the Terminator's sword was even faster, overwhelming Afro at every turn. 7 monks watched the battle, seemingly assured of victory. Despite being at a disadvantage, Afro's eyes gleamed brighter. In this critical moment, Afro recalled the highest realm of swordsmanship taught to him by his master in his youth, and finally had an epiphany. Seeing the Terminator defeated, the monks were shocked. One of the monks immediately detonated the bridge. In the nick of time, Afro managed to escape, while the Terminator plummeted to the bottom of the cliff. But he did not perish. Afro burst into the temple, cutting down the blocking disciples without mercy. The first person awaiting him was the silent and reserved third monk, as he brewed tea and bowed repeatedly, hoping Afro would surrender the second headband. Afro, however, ignored him. He then pushed open the second door, revealing the skilled weapon-wielding sixth monk, who was swiftly struck down by Afro's blade. In his dying moments, the sixth monk tightly grasped Afro's sword, declaring his intention to give Afro a grand gift, a box storing weapons. Suddenly, 2 monks leaped out of the box. Though Afro lost his sword, the scabbard remained at his waist. With a single strike, he knocked out the 5th monk and stacked 2 monks together. The subsequent sword thrust impaled both of them on the spot. By now, The temple was already awash with blood. Among the corpses, monk number 2 was quietly lurking, but he didn't know that he had been discovered by Afro. Afro finally reached the main hall when suddenly the ceiling exploded. Thick smoke billowing as a figure emerged. Raising his arm, the Terminator launched missiles, the fervent blast tearing apart his outer garments, revealing his true form. He relies on the intelligence system to determine the next wave of attack methods. Seeing that his swordsmanship was ineffective against Afro, the Terminator resorted to firing laser beams. At this moment, Afro was already riding on the Terminator. Suddenly, flames spewed from the Terminator's feet, followed by soaring into the sky in a propulsion manner, taking Afro to the layer of clouds above. The battle between Afro and the mechanical warrior came to an end, where the victor always stood as the stronger party. But the Terminator is not dead. He positioned Afro as the highest level of danger, and he prepared to kill Afro with his incendiary cannon. In this critical moment, a sword descended from the sky. It was the Terminator's sword. It hit the incendiary cannon squarely. Afro ascended in the elevator, and the monk who had remained unseen throughout finally emerged at the elevator's bottom. But the present Afro was unstoppable, and in an instant, he met his demise at Afro's hands. As Afro stepped out of the elevator, a warrior donning a bear mask had long been silently waiting. The bear-masked figure before him turned out to be Ajin, Afro's once dearest brother. Their eyes locked in a gaze, and without hesitation, Ajin drew his twin swords, assumed a stance, yet Afro hesitated to unsheath his blade. He doesn't want to take action against his former best friend. Ajin charged forward. He tried to force Afro to fight him, but Afro merely evaded his advances. He's going to flank him and run away. Their chase led them to a city tower. Cliff faces surrounding them on all sides, with no escape route left for Afro. Ajin once again swung his sword at him, but Afro continued to defend without retaliation, until Ajin landed 2 forceful kicks, sending him crashing through the rooftop tiles. Ajin observed Afro lying on the ground, taking a few steps back. Before raising his swords and charging once more, he leaped high into the air, then descended vertically towards Afro. The destructive force of the charge sent smoke billowing out of the air, but it also brought back memories of 6 years ago. By then Afro had already shed his youthful innocence, increasingly resembling his father in appearance. He would typically operate alongside other orphans, but upon receiving news of the second headband, he would venture out to seek clues. This time, he intercepted a group of warriors who seemed to know the whereabouts of the second headband. To obtain leads, Afro opted to strike first, yet Ajin suddenly appeared, joining forces with him to defeat all enemies. From their adversaries' mouths, Afro learned that the holder of the second headband was hidden in this village. It was also then that Ajin discovered that Afro had never forgotten his quest for vengeance. He tried to persuade Afro to give up, not wanting to see Afro fall into the anguish of vengeance. The next day, as they delivered groceries to an elderly person, casual conversation revealed, recently, it seems that there are always samurai coming to trouble their master, with rumors suggesting that the master was the owner of the second headband. Ajin scolded the old man for spreading baseless rumors, but this made Afro suspicious. In the following days, both of them seemed to be secretly observing the incident, and they also noticed that Master has been coming home late at night for the last few days. There was also an unmistakable smell of blood on his body. This also made them more suspicious. So on the day of the bar mitzvah, Afro finally asked that question, but Master didn't answer him. He only told him to wait for him under the tree in the middle of the night. It was there that Afro obtained the answer he had long sought. Master gave him 2 choices: either choose to live a quiet life, or wear the second headband. From now on, he'll live to kill. Just then, a group of people who wanted to get the second headband kidnapped Ajin and other children and showed up here. The master instructed Ajin to take the other children to a different place to continue living their lives. He also wanted Afro to see clearly the fate of being the bearer of the second headband. Alone, he plunged into the fray, despite the master's exceptional swordsmanship. However, the sheer number of opponents quickly resulted in various wounds on the master. Ajin, seeing this, led his fellow disciples forward to help. Yet, these youths, who had never taken a life, despite mastering the master's sword skills, were still no match for the ruthless band. Soon, several children fell at their hands, and as Ajin, heavily injured, attempted to rise and help, he was struck by the enemies once more. Upon witnessing this, Afro immediately dashed forward to rescue Ajin. Looking at the corpses on the ground, Master questioned Afro, "This is the fate of the second headband. Do you still want it?" Afro did not answer but tightly gripped his sword and charged forward, and the master understood his decision. He chose not to resist, allowing Afro to kill him and take possession of the second headband. Ajin is now dragging his badly injured body to its feet. He couldn't accept it. He always thought of Afro as his brother, but Afro killed the master who was like a father to them. Step by step, Ajin retreated until he tumbled off the cliff. Afro thought that everyone he cared about was already dead, and he had no more attachments. This only strengthened his resolve for revenge. Yet, to everyone's surprise, Ajin reappeared, having not perished when he fell off the cliff. Saved alongside Okiku by the old monk, his injuries proved too severe for conventional doctors to mend. Thankfully, the monk sought out the eccentric Dr. Sheen, a physician and mad scientist, who, with a hefty sum exchanged, transformed Ajin into a half-man, half-machine entity, though Ajin was brought back to life. But his horrible appearance made him a monster in the eyes of others. Just when he was about to jump off a cliff and kill himself, the sound of a sword being drawn came from behind him. These people are also looking for clues about the second headband. Ajin didn't want to fight back. He closed his eyes and waited for death. When he opened his eyes once more, only a field of lifeless bodies lay before him. He looked at the sword in his hand with disbelief. In that moment, he realized that deep down, he didn't truly desire death. Yet, he remained uncertain of the purpose of continuing to live. Ajin couldn't help but think of that night, thinking that his pain was all brought about by Afro. In this moment, he resolved to seek vengeance against Afro. Ajin opens his bare mask. He wants Afro to see clearly the horror of his current appearance. Afro, silent, lowered his head and drew his sword. Ajin was very excited. He could finally avenge his master's death. At this moment, Ajin appeared significantly stronger, both in swordsmanship and stamina, undergoing a qualitative transformation. Soon Afro is losing the battle. Ajin is determined to die with Afro. He wanted to take Afro's soul to hell, and apologize to everyone. Under Ajin's reckless attack, Afro was knocked back repeatedly. At this moment, Afro's body is getting more and more wounds. Luckily, he found the right opportunity. A sword destroyed Ajin's chip in the back of his head. This also greatly reduces his combat power. When Afro was being punched away, Afro remembered all the people who died in front of him. There was no turning back. Since he has done so many wrong things for revenge, he can only continue to make mistakes. Then, he took the position of a surefire attack. Both of them rushed towards each other. The more experienced Afro was the better fighter. Then he walks forward without looking back. Through this gate, Afro came to the sanctuary of Mount Sumeru. He finally met his father's enemy Justice again. Justice also told Afro the whole truth. It turns out that to become a god, it's not just about winning the first headband. You have to collect all the headbands. This is also the truth that Justice learned after coming to the sanctuary. In the past 10 years, he has killed the owners of 9 headbands. The only thing missing is Afro's second headband. Justice has waited so long for Afro. He believed he would soon become a god. Then a strange scene happened. The blood from Afro's wound actually poured into Justice's body. It became the nutrients that restored his vitality. Afro knew he couldn't delay any longer, but Justice just pulled out his gun. This made Afro's already serious injuries even worse. At this moment, Justice has already returned to his original form. Afro got up and charged with his sword. Justice, however, directly drew out his double guns. He wanted to use the same method to deal with Afro's father to deal with him, but Afro had already taken precautions against him. He lowered his body and slashed upwards. He cut off Justice's arms, but at that moment, an arm suddenly appeared from Justice's back. But Afro's swordsmanship has long surpassed his father's. He blocked Justice's sneak attack and cut his neck at the same time, but Justice didn't die. He stood up once more, reattaching his severed head to his body. Suddenly, bone spikes burst from his body, drilling into the ground. Afro, caught off guard by this sudden attack, was impaled by the bone spikes. At that moment, Afro also became one of Justice's many trophies. Seeing this, Justice couldn't help but let out a triumphant laugh. However, to his surprise, the bone spikes had only pierced Afro's thick black hair, taking advantage of Justice's moment of arrogance. Afro swiftly cleaved Justice in two and then into 108 pieces. Afro finally retrieved his father's first headband. He dispersed the spirits of all the warriors that Justice had subdued. The so-called sanctuary dissipated. Carrying the first headband, Afro returned to the place where he had once lived with his father. But there, he encountered a new challenger, the resurrected Ajin, who not only survived but also obtained the second headband. This time, Afro hesitated no more. He was ready for a decisive showdown with Ajin. And so, the first season of the series concluded.